They say every child deserves a parent, but not every parent deserves a child. This saying couldn't be truer in today's case. Instead of seeing his children as little people who needed his protection, Mick Philpott saw them as his personal cats, earning him government bonuses. His malice hid him from their humanity in the worst possible way. He was wealthy, narcissistic, and a diagnosed psychopath who ruined the lives of everyone around him. In this video, we'll look at how Philpott and his girlfriends murdered 6 children and what led them to this vicious act. Let's begin. Mick Philpott was born in 1956 in Darwin, England. Mick Philpott was the famous father of 17 children with several women. And if you thought he had so many children because he loved them, you'd be sadly mistaken. You see, he had virtually no cultural qualities. In fact, he was an extremely violent and unpredictable person. His toxic pattern of behavior with women and children began with his first relationship. When he was 19, he fell in love with 15-year-old Kim Hill, and they became involved later. Initially, Kim saw Philpott as the ideal partner, but it didn't take long before he suddenly became aggressive in every sense. His violence was so unfavorable that he even began hitting her in public. On one occasion, in a pub, Philpott hit Kim over the head with a bullet. It must be said that she began to fall seriously ill, but no one offered to help her. He used every excuse he could find to threaten her. For example, when Philpott broke her arm and fractured her shoulder with a knife when she paid too much attention to a child she was deceiving. As a member of the British Army, he senselessly accused her of wrongdoing when he returned from the public and physically attacked her. He also once hit Kim over the head with a crossbody because he felt her clothes were too short. Kim, still at school, often lied about the cause of her injuries to protect Philpott. After 2 years of aggression, in July 1978, Kim took force and sent Philpott a letter of defeat. In response, Philpott retreated from the army and entered Kim's home. He attacked her in her bedroom, stabbing her 27 times. According to Kim, he told her horribly, "If I can't hug you, no one can hug you." When Kim's mother took action, Philpott struck her 11 times. Kim and her mother nearly died from the attack. Despite their serious injuries, her mother, a doctor, answered the phone and called the emergency services. Paramedics arrived and found Philpott still holding the knife. He told them he wasn't worried. "She's gone. I did her a favor." Kim actually died twice in the ambulance and on the operating table as doctors fought to save her life. Philpott opened his mouth and struck her on the back, arms, and legs. She lost her collapsed spine, a lowered shoulder, intestines, and stomach. During surgery, he lied and claimed he had struck her on her own, but all the evidence showed this was not true. Philpott was suspected of a crime involving a dead body. He served 7.5 years in prison, but was released after serving only 3 years and 2 months. According to records, this release was due to his good behavior. It must be said that he suffered nothing more than a slap on the arm and, as we'll soon see, no incident that changed his behavior. In prison, he sent Kim tributes, expressing his support for the revolution and even offering to replace him after his release. This horrific attack left Kim traumatized, and she still receives the message 4 decades later. Recalling his terrible life with Philpott, Kim added, "Don't say no to Mick Philpott. Don't say no to Mick Philpott. He doesn't understand the word." After his release from prison in 1986, Philpott married Pamela Lomax. They had 3 children together, and he continued his violent behavior. Pamela was too afraid to publish it, knowing what had happened to his previous partner, Kim. She asked him to move on, which he did. In 1993, Philpott, then 37, began communicating with a 14-year-old girl named Heather Keogh. Pamela left him after the relationship opened. The younger Heather left her parents to be with him on her 16th birthday, and they had 2 sons. Philpott was aggressive towards her, even hitting her for not having a girlfriend. He even taught his older sons to be violent against Hedda. Philpott wanted Hedda to have more children, but she failed again. She was often chased away when she was cold on the streets, and she said that Officer Philpott once held a knife to her mouth when she tried to leave him. She eventually climbed onto the roof and drove away from him. Hedda was forbidden to let her children go during a long battle. She said Philpott was a Jekyll-and-Hyde figure, sweet when they first met him but later violent. In 2000, Philpott met 19-year-old Murray Duffy. She was the only younger mother who had recently left an abusive relationship. Philpott, she said, became her angel guard. They went out together a little later. He took responsibility for his son and invited her to the hospital after the birth of their first child, Jade. The following year, he also began a relationship with Lisa Wiles, a 16-year-old who also happened to be a single mother. She became his baby mama and moved in with him and Mariah. Perhaps due to Philpott's dominant presence, Lisa and Amare became very close. They communicated regularly, and Lisa said she treated Mari's children as if they were her own. There's clearly a pattern here. Perhaps due to Philpott's dominant presence, Lisa and Mare became very close. They communicated regularly, and Lisa said she treated Mari's children as if they were her own. There's clearly a pattern here. All three women in Philpott's life were girls when they met him. Philpott married Mariah in May 2003, with Lisa as his younger mother. Since that year, Philpott has lived with 2 women and had 11 children in a 3-apartment building. 2 women worked, and he remained unpaid, collecting his wages and government salaries. Philpott actively tried to have more children to collect his wages. He asked for a larger house to provide for his growing family, but he refused due to lack of access. Murray married Mariah in 2003. He was married 7 months, with Murray's child on their wedding day. Philpott has renounced life, expressing pride in his large family and rejecting criticism. He blamed the state for failing to provide adequate farming and argued that, as a self-employed person, he should receive more government assistance. Philpott tried to draw media attention to his farming situation. He appeared on the show Jeremy Kyle in 2007, a program similar to Jerry Springer. On the program, Philpott defended his lifestyle and lack of work, claiming he couldn't get a job because of the media and his criminal record. He became indignant when asked about his relative and his work, leading to arguments with the state about his irresponsible lifestyle. On the program, he revealed he had undergone a vasectomy. He defended himself in typically warm fashion, using offensive language and telling the state, "Speak up, friend, speak up." Philpott introduced his wife, Mariah, and his second wife, Lisa Wiles, on the program, openly acknowledging his illegal residence. He stated that he didn't care about public opinion about his lifestyle and large family. Philpott also said he was willing to strip naked with his wife and marry Lisa, and then undress for her just so she wouldn't feel left out because she hadn't shared Philpott's surname. He went on to have 2 children after this and was dubbed Britain's biggest scrooner after this announcement. He earned £25,000 a year in benefits. So Philpott's plan to secure public support for his extended family was unsuccessful. In 2007, Philpott appeared in an episode of a series in which then-Conservative MP Anne Withicombe spent a week with him and tried to persuade him to change his lifestyle. She found Philpott 3 jobs, one of which was with a company, but he didn't show up for the first day and the job ended. In the documentary, Philpott was shown living in a caravan in his town, where his wife and foreman traveled and spent the nights with him. MP said Philpott was uncaring and used the word **** to refer to his wife and foreman. She also noted that none of his children sought his affection. While many people couldn't understand why the women in his life accepted them or even desired them, the prevailing view was that his partners interacted well with others, but behind closed doors, tensions boiled over. "I have children and I have a family. That's all I care about. Nothing else. Talk to him. Talk to him. If I can rank the children correctly, right? I have 3 with my first wife, 2 with another woman, 5 with Maria, 4 with Lisa, and 1 with another woman.
And 2 on the way.
That's 15 now, with 2 on the way. Plus 1 from when I was in security, whom I never met. I didn't know it was like that. I didn't know it was like that. That it is so. I didn't know it was so. I didn't know it was so. I didn't know it was like that. I didn't know it was like that. I didn't know it was like that. But if you still think, or am I beautiful? She's beautiful to me, you to me all. A meeting with Philpott in St. Petersburg in 2012 brought a fire to his house. Then Philpott stepped in and saved his 6 children from the fire, expressing himself as a heroic father, and won the war. To say the idea was far-fetched would be an understatement. At 4 a.m. on May 11, 2012, Philpott planned to set fire to his house, but tragically he was mistaken. The fire spread much faster than expected. This resulted in the deaths of 6 children. Jade, John, Jack, Jesse, and Jaden died on stage, and their other half, Dwayne, died in the hospital 2 days later. All deaths were attributed to smoke inhalation. Firefighters reported that temperatures in the kitchens exceeded 500 degrees Celsius, making it impossible for anyone in those rooms to survive. Police confirmed the fire was started by smoke inhalation, classifying it as a crime, and officially declaring that 6 children had been killed. All of these children belonged to Merida and Philpott, except for Dwayne, her youngest son from a previous relationship. Jaden was only 10 years old. She was described as very intelligent and well-adjusted to school. 9-year-old John was cheerful, smiling, and respectful. 5-year-old Jaden enjoyed lots of cuddles from family and friends. Tough and tough, 7-year-old Jacques was the quiet brother and a joy to be around. 6-year-old Jesse was described as the loud one in the family. Dwayne, the oldest victim, 13, was described as a sweet and respectful boy who was protective of his younger brothers and sister. No one in the communist community knew their father could do such a thing. Many people who knew and socialized with Philpott and his family defended his life, saying they had negative perceptions of the neighborhood and that he didn't survive. Dwayne, the oldest victim, 13, was described as a sweet and respectful boy who was protective of his younger brothers and sister. No one in the communist community knew their father could do such a thing. Many people who knew and socialized with Philpott and his family defended his life, saying they had negative perceptions of the neighborhood and that he didn't survive. One local, Bobby Sutherland, was inspired to create the lantern to help pay for the funerals of the 6-year-old children he claimed to have loved, Philpott. Fighting back tears as he stood outside the family's fire-ravaged home, he said at the time that yes, they might kill him, but he loved his children. Yes, you make mistakes, but you don't deserve this. No one deserves this. This shows how well Philpott manipulated the people around him and maintained his image as a good husband and father. Lisa Wiles and her siblings were initially questioned, but they quickly cleared up any doubts. Meanwhile, witnesses claimed Philpott acted strangely for a man who had recently lost several of his children and seemed to enjoy the media attention. A nurse said Philpott was engaging in a serious game when he looked at his children's bodies, even putting the family liaison in a lock during one visit. As part of their investigation, police held a press conference where Philpott and Morid spoke. During this press conference, Philpott thanked various people for their support and announced their decision to donate Dwayne's organs to save the life of another child. He expressed gratitude for the community's response and apologized to his family, asking that all questions be directed to the police. This press conference heightened the police's suspicions. Philpott's actions were particularly wrong, including when he spoke to the policewoman. She claimed he called her beautiful and said he wanted her to return to his hotel. We grew up in a society that had many problems with violence, and to see that society come back together is incredible. Police found evidence linking Philpott to the crime. A key container and backpack were found near the house, and in November, investigators discovered that Philpott and Mosley's clothing contained oil. To obtain further information, they placed a recording device in the police backpack and at their hotel. The ordered conversations revealed extensive allegations from Philpott, including that he said it was his fault they lost their children and family. He can be heard saying, "I didn't want to do this in my life." Furthermore, The note captured Philpott watching Maride perform a sexual act on Paula Mosley, their friend. Philpott was overheard telling his wife he was proud she didn't want to do it. It was terrible, but I'm not crying. I'm not crying. On the way back up, I said we were going to a party, but I don't remember what I said. Vicky said she was surprised. I said we weren't crying. In an interview with police, Mosley claimed to have had sex with Maride on a table hours before the fire erupted. It is believed that this act was encouraged by Philpott to maintain Mosley's trust in their cause. Philpott even admitted to having 3 or 4 sexual encounters with his wife and ward, Paul Mosley, shortly after the death of his children. These recordings, along with other evidence such as an unused ladder located at the back of the house intended for escape, also led to Philpott Maride and Paul Mosley being implicated in the arsenal. On May 28, 2012, Philpott and Maride were arrested for alleged murder. They were charged with murder 2 days later. On November 5, 2012, Paul Mosley was also arrested for alleged murder after a forensic analysis revealed petrol on his clothing. Trial heard that Mosley had spoken to several people about being a suspect, including on websites. Whatever Mosley's role, it appears Philpott wanted to keep him out of the picture, and police believe they were involved in the case. In December 2012, Philpott and Maride were arrested for alleged murder after being arrested for alleged murder. Evidence shows that, although they did not intend to kill their children, they planned to frame Lisa for alleged murder in order to provide for her children. Their motivation wasn't simply revenge, but the fact that more children meant more money and possibly more houses. In December 2013, the couple, along with Paul Mosley, were arrested for allegedly murdering the deceased's 6 children. Philpott received life sentences with a minimum of 15 years in prison. Maride and Paul Mosley received 17 years with a minimum of 8.5 years to serve. Maride was later charged with her reprimand, but the court stated that the original term reflected the unprofitable injury she had committed. Judges in court said that petrol found on her clothing showed she had participated in the reprimand, which was not a planned act. She also lied after her arrest, the judges said, and continued to conceal the truth during her sentencing. In her reprimands, Mrs. Tallioul said the fire was clearly Philpott's idea, but she claimed Maride's children died because she had put her husband first. Ms. Tallioul blamed Philpott for Maride, and found her reprimand reflected the unfavorable injury she had committed for killing her cogs, for which, like any other mother, she bore absolute responsibility. After checking all the conditions and a careful examination, the judges concluded that this reprimand should be noted. In November 2020, Maride was forced to resign. She also received a new identity for her protection. The Crime Prevention Center described the release as stunning and called for the killers to serve their full sentences for such crimes. Paul Mosley was also released from prison in May 2021 after serving half his sentence, but returned to prison in 2022 after being convicted of the charges. In November 2023, he was released again. Again, the panel ruled that the prosecution was no longer necessary to protect the public. So while Maride and Mosley are free, Philpott remains in prison, serving his minimum sentence of 15 years. Philpott was characterized as a monster, aggressive toward women and exploitative of the healthcare system, who adopted children primarily as a source of income. Psychologist Glenn Wilson described Philpott as a clinical psychopath and exploitative with antisocial personality disorder. What do you think of this horrific case and everyone involved? Do you think his words were too light? Philpott really did get off too lightly for his attempted murder in the 1970s. Do you think these deaths would have been preventable if the government had been stronger back then? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you want more videos like this, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay up to date with more videos about extreme crimes. See you next time.